My name is Christian Ashley, a seminary student and servant of God, and you are listening to the Let Nothing Move You podcast, a proud Anazal Ministries podcast.
This is part of our creed, is that we expose darkness for what it is, not to judge people and have some superiority complex over people, but as Christian was saying, to show them how these lies and false philosophies, which ultimately come from the spiritual forces of evil, are ensnaring them, and how Jesus wakes us up from these lies.
Everyone faces demonic oppression at some point in time. But I knew that God had just vanquished something that I had no power to defeat on my own. And that has changed me forever.
I'm Kari Rowe, and this is the Foreign Saint Show, helping you to better love God, love people, and make disciples of all nations. And I'm glad to say, finally, after long last, I am joined by Christian Ashley, my good brother, my good partner in ministry and the gospel, host of the Let Nothing Move You podcast on Spotify. Introduce yourself to the people, my friend.
Yeah, I've been wanting to do this for some time. You know, I've been on this show before, way back when, but just schedules haven't aligned. Got to test out the new features you're using here, so I'm looking forward to it. So I'm Christian Ashley. Currently, I'm a seminary student at the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary. I'm in my third year, hopefully my last year. Where it goes from there, who knows? It's one of those things I have to deny myself and just say, well, he has the answer. I just need to be patient for it. So, you want to go?
Hey, I feel that, man.
Yeah.
To the viewers of the show, as you can tell, this is my first guest on the show. I got a few more lined up, like I've been saying, but I wanted to be true to my word and let my brother Christian Ashley here have the first spot, since he was so gracious as to give me, first interview dibs on his show. And I can vouch for the guy that he's a brother, theologically sharp, knows the gospel, and he has a gigantic heart for his fellow man, even if he himself doesn't always think so. But just so you know, this is the first episode in an ongoing series that I'm not entirely sure what I want to title this series. Hall of Faith, Unworthy of the World. I'm not entirely sure. We'll see. We'll see what I eventually decide to title it. But the point of this series is to bring you guys in contact with real Christians that are actually doing real work for the kingdom. Let them give their gospel testimony, the gospel from their point of view. You guys hear me yap all the time. Hear it from somebody else. And also to allow them to talk about something that's passionate to them, that has an inroads to the kingdom and has an outflow of benefit to our fellow man. So our topic today is going to be spiritual warfare as it pertains to Satan and the demonic. We got a great study in for you guys today. But for now, as is tradition on the Foreign Saint Show, anytime I have a guest, before we get into our topic, I would like to invite our guest to give a gospel presentation in their own words with their own testimony of how they came to know the Lord. And so, Christian, the floor is yours, buddy. No time limit. Tell the gospel as you see fit.
Yeah, absolutely. I grew up in the church, Baptist church, pretty much a couple of days after I was born. My mother was there with me, and it was like, don't you want to stay home and rest? I said, no, we got to be at church. So it's been part of my life for as long as I've been alive. I came to faith when I was 6. After one particular sermon, my dad took me aside and he asked me a couple of questions, being like, what do you think about Jesus? What do you think it means to be saved? And, as much as a 6-year-old can understand what they're getting into, I gave my life to Christ. And after that, I pestered my pastor to be baptized for like months. He didn't budge one bit. He said, we're doing it on this day and not a day before. So eventually got to that point, got baptized, continued on in the church, children's ministry, youth ministry, and then we moved to a separate church. When I was in 4th grade, we were shopping around at different churches, checked out some Presbyterians, some Methodists, and ended up at another Baptist church, real life, where I would stay until high school. Grew up with a great group of friends. That Pastor Mike Davis is still a spiritual mentor to me today. He's been a second dad to me, has helped me walk me through lots of bits of my faith alongside my family, alongside a really great group of believers there. But it was around that time in high school, and I was about 16, that I first felt the call to ministry. Now, if you know anything about me, I'm very misanthropic by nature. I don't want to lead. It's because that involves working with other humans. And I don't want to care about other people who aren't me. But that was one of the things Jesus was trying to change about me. And slowly over time, he changed bits of those aspects, but I said no to him. I'm not doing this. I don't want to be the one in charge. I just want to be the grunt behind the scenes who can get there, get some stuff done, and then leave. I don't want to have to deal with like the grand overarching things of, you got to think about budget. You got to think about, this person doesn't like this person, so how am I going to mediate that? That's not me by nature, but it's something I'm actually good at because that's how he's gifted me. And as much as I want to deny that part of myself, it's what he wants me to do. So I said no. I went to college for creative writing with a minor in English. I was also that idiot who thought he could double major in marine biology and creative writing until I failed chemistry because I like science. I don't like my science with math. So that changed things a little bit. So got my degree in creative writing, tried to find a job in my field, nothing doing. I can look back on that now and say, okay, those are clearly closed doors that I was too bullheaded to realize that he didn't want me to go there. Because it was that typical, oh, well, we need someone with 3 to 5 years of experience. Well, how am I supposed to get the experience if no one ever hires me for anything? So quite upset about that. He brought me back home and got back into real life, which through a small group there is how I met Karai. And two of us, both being egotistical and also just scholarly at the same time. Kind of, you bring two people who are convinced they're the smartest person in the room together. Well, one, you can either bend the other to your will, or you can just become friends and ignore the part where you think, well, they're not as smart as me. So
facts, bro.
So, I mean, we hung out a lot more often, getting the scripture as well, but just hanging out as people, having fun. Unfortunately, the church that spun off of that failed. Karai's talked a little bit about it before. I'm not going to add too much to that, save to say that I think things started a little too early for its own good. But it was definitely a time when I was growing a lot, so I was very grateful for that. And it was around this time when I started working back at my old high school as a nighttime janitor. And that is not where I saw myself, 10 years, a little less than 10 years after graduating college. But once again, that was God using that to humble me and realize, okay, take care of these other people's needs because you're not doing what I tell you to do. So eventually, one of my spiritual gifts is teaching. And I was going to sign up online for UNC Charlotte to do their online teaching classes so I can get a teaching certificate because my dad's a teacher. Like I said, I have the gift of teaching. It's something I'm really good at. But every single time I uploaded the class and said, these are the ones I'm picking, and hit submit, it was like I'd done nothing. I did it again. Same result. I did it a third time. Same result.
Oh, wow.
I'm getting angry now because obviously there's a technological issue. It couldn't possibly be that God was trying to mess with me. So emailed the person in charge of all their online stuff, never got a reply. Now, when that happened, I went to my dad and my mom and said, look, I think I know why this is happening. And just admitted to them, hey, I felt the call to ministry ever since I was a teenager. And surprisingly, they both said, yeah, we kind of felt the same. So, well, it would have been nice, to have challenged me on that earlier.
Just let you walk into a wall. It's parenting 101, bro.
Yeah, I know. It's just that one thing. You kind of have to let your kids beat themselves up sometimes. You can't rush to their defense every time. Sometimes they just need to learn. Oh, well, I'm bleeding because I keep hitting the wall.
Yep. I
So,
gotta do that with my little ones now, man. I'm like, I could save you from that, but it'll
you'll
stick
learn
better
better.
if you figure it out.
Yep. So I just submitted that to them, talked to my pastor. I said, I'm looking at seminary. So I checked out Southwestern Seminary, liked it, too far away from home for me. Went to Southern Seminary here in Louisville, and it just clicked. The entire time I was doing the tour, I just kept hearing the word mission-minded. That was definitely not for me. I don't think in that kind of parlance, but ever since I've been here, I have been challenged by some of the smartest men I've ever known in my life to, get into the Word, to actually understand those things I say I understand. Yeah, sure, I'm pretty dang smart, but I haven't understood the Bible as well as I think I do, without the essential teaching they brought to me. So right now, I'm currently, like I said, in my third year, hopefully last year, and I attend Walnut Street Baptist Church. Just joined there in March, and help out with the youth ministry and occasionally anywhere else that I'm needed.
Nice. Nice. Good stuff. Good stuff. Good stuff. Yeah, so that's Christian Ashley, guys. Like I said, and dude is he's a smart cookie, man. He's smart. He's smart. That's why even I personally listen to this dude's podcast. He's a regular in my rotation. Like I said, he's on Let Nothing Move You. Let nothing move you, man. You gotta put respect. You gotta put some respect on this guy's name. All right.
That comes from I think it's the NIV translation of 1 Corinthians 15:58. It's one part of the verse, but it's just Paul talking into context of like, look, this is your faith. This is what you believe. Let nothing move you from those ideas. So that's where I want to be.
I feel it. And just so the people know, right here, we got ourselves a nice little QR code. That's what it looks like on Spotify. If you search up "Let Nothing Move You," so that way you know what the logo looks like. I'll screenshot, that QR code if you want to. Take a picture of it if you're watching on a bigger screen. Put some respect on my guy's name. Dude knows what he's talking about, man. He definitely does. So with that being said, let's go ahead and let's get into our topic for today.
All right.
Hang on. Now I got to get back to the notes because I had to leave my notes to open that up. I mean, I guess I didn't actually have. I didn't actually have to leave the notes. I just got excited. About putting respect on my guy's name.
Well,
so I just had to pull up. The logo, man. Let the people know.
Yeah. Well, while we're waiting, I suppose I should also mention I'm a co-host of Systematic Geekology, where we cover different geeky topics, from Star Wars to Disney to anime to what have you, and when applicable, we bring up this more spiritual side of things. And I'm trying like shove Jesus into a hole he doesn't, a square hole or anything like that, as best as possible. I'm also the host of the Why I Don't Like podcast, where I go over things that different anime, comics, so on and so forth that I don't quite like. And instead of being like, hey, I hate the show and everything about it, I just attempt to give feedback of like how things could be better, what I do like about things.
See, also, and that's more what we need too in art. You know what I'm saying? Like y'all gotta learn how to constructively criticize your art. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Final one, I swear.
No, you're good, man. You're good.
Yeah, it's all good. I'm very bad at self-promoting until moments like this, so it hasn't been released yet. I'm still in the process of doing it, but normally for the Systematic Geekology YouTube page, once a month I do something called Friday Night Frights, where I cover like cryptozoology, paranormal, ufology, something like that. And that is going to be coming to podcast form, but not everything because the old files are gone. So we just had the video for the older ones. So I think the last 2 episodes we did, because I worked with Joe Day of Buddy Walk with Jesus for that. So there's that.
Nice. All right. I got like I said, check that stuff out. I got my notes back up so we can go. And as we're getting into it, I just want to give a quick shout out. Because I just want to give a quick shout out to the new listeners. And let's see, what was my last shout out? Last shout out was Russia. So since then, I want to give a shout out to the new listeners in Finland and in Spain as of, I don't know, a couple days ago. So all you guys, the one or two of you that I have in different locations around the world, definitely check this guy out if you've got the ability to. But for now, let me show you what we see in Logos. And like I said, we're going to be talking about spiritual warfare. So the first place that I want us to go is the book of Ephesians, just so that we can actually get a definition of what spiritual warfare even is. Because I feel like, and maybe you can, you can correct me if you feel like it's a little bit different, but sometimes I feel like the definition that we give for spiritual warfare is a little bit oogie boogie, you know? Like, you know what I mean? Like we don't it's not like a hard and fast definition per se.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to quote, Ephesians 6 verses 11 to 13, and then kind of share the definition that I've pulled from this. So Paul, writing to the Ephesian church, he says, "Put on the whole armor of God." You might say, so that you would let nothing move you. I'll stop. Okay. Put on the whole armor of God, that you may be able to stand against the schemes of the devil. For we do not wrestle against flesh and blood, but against the rulers, against the authorities, against the cosmic powers over this present darkness, against the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. Therefore, take up the whole armor of God, that you may be able to withstand in the evil day, and having done all, to stand firm. And so, correct me if I'm wrong, Mr. Theologian, but the definition that I see in this text, or the way that I'm defining spiritual warfare, is standing against the schemes of the devil with God's armor, wrestling against the cosmic powers over this present darkness and the spiritual forces of evil in the heavenly places. How's that sound as a definition for spiritual warfare to you, buddy?
Hey, pretty solid.
Because that's really what it is. And I like that definition because it encompasses the whole gamut, to be perfectly honest, as far as it pertains to, Satan and the demonic. There's a whole other aspect of spiritual warfare that's more about you versus you. You up against the unholy trinity of me, myself, and I. But that's a whole nother episode right there, man. And so I wanted to take the time to kind of walk through our defensive and our offensive weapons, and I do say offensive weapons in the plural, because I think you've probably heard this too. Like a really popular kind of quote is that we've only got one offensive weapon, and that's the Word of God. Which sounds good. It definitely preaches good, and I like the fact that it really elevates the necessity of the text. My issue with it, though, is in looking at this passage afresh for this episode, I'm like, there's a lot of commas here for there to be just one weapon.
Yeah.
Like I'm counting technically more than just the Word of God here. And so, I don't want to shortchange us by communicating our theology in the form of memes. I don't think that's helpful. But yeah, Christian, I probably should have asked you this in the setup, to be perfectly honest, but you can see the scripture well enough to read it out loud for the people, yeah?
Yep.
All right. So if you would give us verses, let's say 14 through 17, up until the helmet.
Okay. So stop at helmet.
Yep.
Okay. Stand therefore, having fastened on the belt of truth, and having put on the breastplate of righteousness, and as shoes for your feet, having put on the readiness given by the gospel of peace. In all circumstances, take up the shield of faith, with which you can extinguish all the flaming darts of the evil one, and take the helmet.
Yep, the helmet of salvation. So as we can see, so all this right here, and like I said, interjects. Same rules as on your show apply, bro. Interject whenever you want. I think that this section here is what we might call our defensive weaponry. just for the sake of ease, I probably could highlight it like that. Let's make it green. Why not? Let's do green. That right there is our defensive weaponry right there. So what do we have on defense? We have truth. We have righteousness. And I personally don't make the biggest deal out of the clothing metaphor, because you could end up in a weird rabbit hole, trying to force things into pictures that are more just trying to show you that all these things work together. If you have truth without righteousness, the armor kind of falls apart. Salvation but no faith, you don't have any joy. Talk about David in the Psalms asking for God to return to him the joy of his salvation. I got salvation, I don't have faith, so I'm kind of, the clothing metaphor just shows the interconnectedness of it all. So like I said, on defense, truth, righteousness, the readiness given by the gospel of peace, faith, and salvation. Esteemed guest and scholar to the people, Christian Ashley, what are your thoughts on my exegesis here?
I think we're rock solid, man, as per usual. I mean, looking on this, I think it's important too that we what is it? I think in the Greek word used here, I don't have it in front of me, but from what I've studied before, the only other time the term is used for the whole armor or something of that sort is in Luke 11.
For which term you said?
The Greek word for armor.
The Greek word for armor. You keep talking. I'll see if I can find it for you.
And it's Jesus talking in context about a strong man defending his own place, his own palace. Mm-hmm. And therefore, because he's strong, because he's fully armored, his goods are in peace. Therefore, you don't have to worry about anything. But when a stronger guy comes in and overcomes him, he takes the armor and divides the spoils among the new guy who is now stronger.
Right.
So this whole idea of putting on the whole armor is what's important here. Because I can't just put on one bit. I can't just put on this. I like the truth belt. That's pretty cool. Hang on. It needs to be
there we go. Yep.
Everything.
Oh, I feel that. Sorry, I couldn't kind of comment on that. Connection kind of went fuzzy for a second. The way that this works, though, Christian, is whenever
I keep talking or
but the way that this works is whenever on the final edit, people actually shouldn't see that. The way that this works. So yeah, it's good that you just keep on trucking. I didn't hear though if you were able to comment on Panoplian.
No, I have not.
I think at least that's the word that's used here. Let me come into it. Yeah, but you're right though. The complete armor, like every weapon, properly a complete set of defensive and offensive armor. Everything needed to wage successful warfare, the full resources. Yeah, we need it all, man. We need it all. And now we're back in here.
I think there's something to be said too. Like, hey, in the Luke, he's wearing the complete armor, and he still can be overtaken by a stronger man. So not just having the armor on saves you. You need to be stronger than the guy trying to take your stuff.
Right.
Trying to get you to sin.
Right. Oh man, ain't that the truth? Like having the armor without being empowered by the might of the Lord really is just like Pharisaism. Really, you know what I'm saying? Like it's just saying that the defense of my traditions will be enough, separate the empowerment of the Spirit of God on defense and offense. It doesn't, like he said, it doesn't work that way. Definitely doesn't work that way. So then coming over to offense, and like I said, I think we actually do have more than one offensive weapon. Like I said, it preaches good, saying we just got one, but is it true? So Christian, if you could pick up around, where it says the sword of the Spirit, and finish off to the beginning of 19.
And the sword of the Spirit, which is the word of God, praying at all times in the Spirit with all prayer and supplication. To that end, keep alert with all perseverance, making supplication for all the saints.
Indeed, indeed. And then Paul's going to go on to ask for personal prayer. But again, correct me if I'm wrong, esteemed scholar of the people, but on offense, I see at least 4 things. The Word of God, a.k.a. the sword of the Spirit, which I think is such cool imagery. Prayer in the Spirit, which I think is interesting. Prayer in the Spirit. And then followed up with alertness and perseverance. I would think that both of these things count. I mean, of course, they're useful on defense, but even more so on offense. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, it makes perfect sense to me. I mean, because prayer, I mean, we have this idea of, well, I'll just go and I'll pray. I'll sit down, or maybe I'll stand, or maybe I'll go to a prayer closet. And like, well, I'm not like beating anyone up. I'm not like, there's no sword in my hand in that moment. But really there is. Because what better place could there be to make an offensive strike than to be in a moment where you can ask God for anything in the Spirit that you know is what he desires? That sounds like offense to me. I mean, sure, yeah, it doesn't look cool on the battlefield. Just, all right, hold on one second, guys. Let me just put my sword down and let me down my knees and pray. But just because it doesn't look cool doesn't mean it's not cool.
Yeah,
and
it doesn't mean it's not effective.
Yeah. We also get being alert. Well, if you're not alert in a battle, that's an offensive tactic. It's also a defensive tactic. So they're one and the same. It's like, if I'm not prepared, that strong man can take me. So I need to be alert. And to persevere is even more. You need to have a stamina for this. I say that as someone who has no physical stamina. It doesn't last very long. But when it comes to resisting temptation, when it comes to fighting for what's right, like, I have to have that perseverance. That is an active move I have to make.
Oh yeah, and we'll definitely. I'm glad you agree, and we'll definitely push forward in flushing these things out as we go. Right now, Christian, get ready to share your story. But first, I got 2 selections from the armory to share. I'm going to bring up the first one now. And I'm vain, so I could have had it sitting next to me, but I like the visual pulling it off the shelf. This is The Strategy of Satan by Warren W. Wiersbe. If you've not given it a read, it is a great little book. It's quite short. On the back of the book, it says, this book is a manual of arms for the Christian soldier. It is not a devotional reader for the believer who has gone AWOL. Talk about shots fired, golly. It is a deadly serious guidebook for dedicated Christians who are on the battlefield and want to know how to win. So yeah, I would advise giving this little guy a pickup and a read. But a quick overview of the book. He talks about, the 4 big domains where Satan and his forces really try to attack. So 1, Satan will try to attack your mind with lies to keep you ignorant of the scripture. So read your Bible, folks. 2, Satan will try to attack your body via suffering to make you impatient with God's timetable. So while you're in that crucible, look for ways to glorify God in Christ. 3, Satan will try to attack your will by appealing to your pride. And good Lord, don't the both of us know that? So humble yourself. Humble yourself by doing what Paul tells us to do in Romans, by presenting yourself to the Holy Spirit daily for life and service. And 4thly, Satan will try to attack your heart and mind by accusing you of sin, hypocrisy, or just lack of worth in general. So remind yourself all the time that God the Son died for you and is currently alive as your high priest, interceding for you before the Father. All that and more is expounded upon in The Strategy of Satan. Give it a read. It's really good. Christian, story time from you, brother.
Before we get there, that first point, I want to make a point about that.
Mm-hmm.
Of Satan will try to attack your mind with lies to keep you ignorant of Scripture, so read your Bible.
Yep.
But this really came to me when I was about 12 or 13, and I was reading through the Bible for the first time on my own time of my own volition, and I was reading, I think it was Luke 4, where Satan is trying to tempt Jesus. And he uses Scripture as part of his argument against what Jesus is trying to say. And as that kid, I realized Satan knew more about Scripture than I did.
Scary thought, ain't it?
And if there's such a thing as being spiritually pissed off, I think that's exactly how I felt. As that kid being like, oh, well, I got to know better. I got to read more. Because, like, yeah, I read through some of the stuff. I had to go start from Genesis all the way to Luke to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, did it really click to me what I was doing until that moment? No. So I had spent several months reading Scripture. Yeah, that's great. But was I understanding it? Was I actually utilizing it? Did I understand if someone used it against me, how would I react? Well, no. I wouldn't have been ready to react. Until I started reading it better, until I started learning from other people and asking questions, not being afraid to ask questions. Because that's another thing Satan will try and do, make you think, well, you're just stupid for not getting it, so everyone else gets it. So why would you ever out yourself as that person who doesn't get it? Well, guess what? You're amongst a group of people who don't get everything.
Right. Why do you think I do this show? Like, why do we do our shows, you know? Like,
ask your pastor his opinions on the Trinity and see how many times heresy kind of gets brought in because people don't know well enough. And even at the end of the day, you're not going to have the exact answer because we're too dumb to understand the Trinity.
Oof. Say it louder for those in the back. Golly, bro. Y'all see why I brought this guy on first, right? All y'all other interviews, man. This is the bar y'all got. This is the bar y'all gotta live up to, man.
Yeah. So.
All right, man. Tell your story, man. Christian Ashley, he's had an experience, a spiritual experience with the darker kind. He's given me hints and snippets of it before, but I, along with the rest of you audience, I'm going to get the full details here, bro. So for all of you that feel like you've had some wild situations spiritually and just don't know what the heck to do with it, and that's the thing that kind of sparks perhaps your interest in the spiritual, maybe you'll find some solace, you'll find some guidance in what Christian has to say here. So the floor is yours, friend. The floor is yours.
So post-college, I was trying to figure out what exactly to do. Because this whole idea of, well, just go to college and you'll get a job in your field doesn't exist anymore. Not in the same way. So as I'm struggling with that, my two roommates are about to leave because I live with two other guys off campus, and they were going to get jobs of their own, go back home. And then there's me, stuck at Chick-fil-A. Hey, great company, but it's not what I want to do with my life. So I'm struggling and wrestling. It's like there's things I want to do, but they're not giving to me. And now in hindsight, I can look back and say, well, yeah, he kept shutting those doors in your face because you said no to him. But being younger and dumber and more immature, I didn't get that. So while working at Chick-fil-A, I sparked a friendship with a coworker there who, shall we say, was a bit rough. Drugs, alcohol, sex, whole thing. Until God brought him to his breaking point, and he came to faith. And that made me realize, I hadn't been talking to him as much as I should about Jesus. So we talked about that a little bit more, started to grow a little better as brothers, as this newfound brother in the faith. I wanted to be there around him and protect him as best as possible. And we agreed to become roommates. And I set that up for what happens later because I am convinced to this day that's why these things happen. Because that brother was oppressed. And I will specify oppression versus possession real quick. We have our Hollywood idea of, a demon, enters a person, and you got to shout at them a bunch of times, and eventually they break and leave, and, that's it. there is possession out there. We see possession in the Bible. It's all over the Gospels of people who don't know him. So there's something that can infect their soul, invite themselves in. But then there's oppression. Everyone faces demonic oppression at some point in time, whether it's realized or not. And that is Satan and his minions. And I highly doubt I'm ever high enough on the ranking list for Satan to personally involve himself with my life. So I try and get that out of the way as soon as possible. But something out there is going to target one of us, one of his demons, one of the spirits out there who actively want the worst for us. Will cause bad things to happen in your life. Will cause you to linger on those temptations a little longer. And then eventually you make the decision, but it started somewhere else. So he was, I'm convinced, was possessed before he came to faith for a time. And eventually, I was not here for this. This is secondhand. They cast that spirit out of him. And later on, he came to faith. So there I am, just graduated college, about to be roommates with this man. I'll say his name, James. He wouldn't mind me saying this. Still a very dear friend to this day. And if you know me, by nature, I'm a very paranoid person. So I make sure the door to my house or apartment or whatever is locked. I make sure the door to my room inside of that apartment is locked. I make sure there's no way something's getting to me unless they really, really want to. So I had asked one of my roommates that night if I could borrow his Game of Thrones Season 1 DVD. I had listened to that, fell asleep while watching it, woke up several hours later with that still on, playing in the background, and I recognized I wasn't alone in my room. Not by sight, because at no point in this ordeal did I ever open my eyes because I was terrified. But I recognized I wasn't alone, and whatever else was in that room with me hated me. With every fiber of whatever makes up its being, this thing hated me. And as I was under the covers, like pulling them over me like a child, being like, well, this will protect me from whatever's in the room. Very rational thing to do at that time. Recognized, I don't know what this thing is, but I know I'm not safe. And then, whatever this was, I could tell somehow, psychically, whatever you want to call it, that it was positioned right on my side of the door, which was locked still, and then it teleported right beside my bed. And a blast of overwhelming, sheer cold penetrated my covers and made me freeze. And if you know anything about me, I don't get cold. Karai has seen it multiple times over. In the middle of winter, I will be wearing T-shirt, basketball shorts, and I'll be okay while everyone else is shivering and, about to pass away.
Yeah, it's pretty nonsensical, but it happens.
So I don't get cold that easily. Not that I ever don't get cold. But whatever this being had as powers, it was doing that. Around this time, I started to think, I think I know what this thing is. And I think I know why it's angry at me. Because I'm convinced to this day that is whatever demonic entity was attached to my brother James before he came to faith. And knew that I was going to be a positive influence for him as growing in the faith. And it wanted me gone. But it was restricted. In the same way we look at Job at the very beginning, God restricting Satan from, hey, you can do all these things, but you can't take his life. Now, I'm not exactly putting myself in the place of Job there, but using that as an example. So me, brave defender of the faith that I am, moved around under the covers to try and make myself warm without ever once looking in this creature's direction because, honestly, I was afraid. I didn't want to see it. I didn't want to I knew something was there. Logically, I knew something was there, but I didn't want to give it a face. I didn't want to give it anything else. And as it just kept pelting me with just this wave of anger and then the cold on top of that, I realized I couldn't defend myself. I could toss and turn under those covers as much as I want. Thank God this wasn't sleep paralysis because I've never experienced that. And from people who have, I never want to do it. This was wide awake, want nothing to do with this. I said, look, Lord, I can't do this. I need your help. The moment I said that, it was gone. No evidence of anything in the room. There was no like brimstone and sulfur, left behind on the floor. Didn't see any goat legs or a tail or horns or anything. There was no frost left behind by the cold. But I knew that God had just vanquished something that I had no power to defeat on my own. And that has changed me forever.
Wow. That's a story, man. And I can say I've had, like I said, I don't talk about it too much, mainly just because it's not become relevant. Although nowadays I think it is. I've mentioned this before. I think I've told you about this too. But as people on the channel now know, I like to go to Charlotte Gay Pride and talk about Jesus with people that are there. A couple years ago now, I talked to one individual, and he wasn't on any substances, he wasn't high, he was in his right mind, and he just calmly told me about how he somewhat regularly, in times when he is high, will have experiences with what he described as creatures of dancing light. Now there's only two options here. Either he's lying or he thinks he's telling the truth. If he thinks he's telling the truth, then it's got to be either a hallucination brought on by the drugs or some sort of spiritual attack. But considering that he told me that this happens pretty consistently when he does get high, and considering that I've worked with enough druggies in the medical field at this point to know that no two hallucinations ever hit the same way, I lean towards he was actually communing with demons, And so it's just interesting how, as culture, and we'll talk about this when we get into the spiritual warfare or cultural level at the end, but as we push in as a culture more and more away from God, as we reject God, and as God lets us do our own thing, a la Romans 1, we're not going to stay in what C.S. Lewis calls the halfway house of atheism and agnosticism for long as a culture. We will replace the one true God with other false gods. And if you knock on that door enough times, you'll find what you're looking for. And so, not just there at Gay Pride, I had a chick at Walmart where I used to work actually ask me to perform an exorcism because she said that she had regular occurrences like the one that you described, Christian, but she's not a Christian. So the only solace that she could find was burying sage in her backyard as like a pseudo offering to this thing. And if payments were late, there were consequences, she said. And she came to me asking for an exorcism. I ended up denying her because, she didn't want to. I was like, okay, if I do this and you don't become a Christian, you're opening yourself up to worse. Are you willing to bend the knee to Jesus? He said no. But I just think it's interesting how over the last few years, more and more evangelizing and sharing the gospel is less about proving to people that the supernatural exists and more showing them that there is a dark side to the supernatural that they are regularly flirting with on a daily basis outside of Christ. It's interesting moving into this brave new world of neo-paganism as a culture. And this is in what is supposedly the Bible Belt, but again, that really shouldn't surprise me because the first exorcism that you read about in Mark happened in the synagogue. So, those things don't provide these external things don't provide the kind of protection that the spirit on the internal does. But Christian, what are some? I mean, that's an incredible story. And like I said, I haven't even shared, you know, all of what's happened in my life either. Like, a lot of the encounters that I've had have been more in dreams than, you know, than like waking. Um, but I have a lot of dreams, and I'm somewhat skilled at lucid dreaming. So, you know, on those rare, like two or three occasions where there was something spiritual behind it, dude, the experience had a whole different flavor than like a dream, than a nightmare. And like, well, maybe it's a nightmare. No, because I've had nightmares before. And this wasn't that. I mean, it was scary, I guess. That's like the only overlap, but there's a visceralness to it. Um, so yeah, like I get it. But in your journey of life, what are some of the responses that people have had? What are some of the responses that, the church or people in the church have had to, the supernatural, I guess, as represented by your story, or just as a broad category?
This incident was one that forced me to grow a lot in many ways. One of them was realizing that certain people in my life weren't as trustworthy as I thought, weren't as intelligent as I thought spiritually.
Be sure that you do speak up a little bit into the mic here. I want people to catch this.
The moment this happened, the moment it was done, I knew I could never go back from this. I can't pretend it didn't happen. So I'm a writer by trade. I wrote a nonfiction account of what happened. I still have it saved away. My intent was, hey, here's what happened to me. I don't want it to happen to you. And if it does, here's what you do. There is no grand ceremony of, if we just get these specific religious items together, then that'll expel the demon. It's like, no. Jesus was the only way out. It wasn't me. It was me submitting to him that got us out of this. And it's like, oh, well, that's a perfect example for the church. People are going to get on this. And my pastor at the time is someone that I've had some issues with. I will not name him out of respect. And his reaction to the story was essentially, that's great, but I have these other issues with you we need to resolve first. Which, hey, one of those, pride, definitely something that needed to be worked on a lot. Not the way he handled it, but could you not just remain with me in the story I just presented here? We can talk about that later. I just gave you this account. Can you work with me here? And a lot of people in that church didn't. Most of the responses I got specifically there were from people who'd be like, that's a great story. Didn't happen, obviously, because those aren't real. And this, for the most part, was a pretty, inerrant, infallible-leaning church.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, supposedly, within those members, there were people who said, well, don't worry about that demon part. That's an illustration. That's mental illness. And, like, look, some of it may be mental illness. Like, you go back to King Saul. I think part of that was mental illness combined with him being oppressed by a spirit.
Yep.
Which did not help matters.
And all throughout the Gospels, they make a distinction between mental illness and demonic oppression. When you read the lists of things that Jesus did, it would say he healed all those with mental illnesses and those with demons. There's a distinction in those categories made even in the Gospels.
So providentially, there were people who actually responded well. My parents, for one. Pastor Mike responded really well to it. But when I'm sending things out, hopefully maybe get this published, radio silence. Be like, not even the honor, the distinct honor of being sent an automated response. Which, for those of you who write, you know that all too well. So it really made me angry at the church for a little bit. In that how could you deny this? Or how could you just stick your head in the sand and say, you're telling your story, but I'm gonna focus on this over here, and maybe start to question, like, okay, why are people responding this way? And I think my honest answer is because they don't want to think about it. Because it's difficult. You have to wrestle with something like that. We can believe in God and angels all day long because they're good and positive. A guardian angel. We've got our own guardian angel. It's watching over us. That's a great story. But there's also this other side that we hear about in Scripture that hates us, that wants us gone, that wants us to suffer. And then we as people look at that and go, well, I'll take this part, but I won't take that part, which is completely incompatible with how I read the text of the Bible. I take the parts I don't like with the parts that I really do like because I don't get to say what God says.
Right.
I don't get to tell him, you were wrong to write these things down, Lord.
It is an insane position to take, yeah.
So what it has forced me to do is kind of look at our culture, outside of the church, how we respond to paranormal. It's like you look at your Paranormal Activity series or something like that, which, I love the movies. I'm a horror fan. I love these things. But when you actually look at a spiritual perspective, on a Christian perspective, those movies would be over in 5 seconds if someone of faith was there.
Facts.
Okay, when you look at every single exorcism in Scripture, there is no grand ordeal. There is no 2 priests battling over this little child as she's spinning her head around and spewing out this ooze everywhere. It is, get out. And then it leaves because someone under the authority of God commanded it to leave. But when I look at people in the church, the Catholic Church is probably going to be on everyone's mind here in this regard because they're the ones who perform the most exorcisms, at least publicly available, because they're better organized than us. But that's its own separate issue. But when I hear these reports of it took this, we had to pray over the rosary, and we had to sprinkle holy water on them, I kind of go, and I should be better about this, but where's your faith? Like,
yeah.
if you really were who you said you are, which I do believe Catholics are Christians. Let me put that out there real quick. There are plenty of people in the Catholic Church who aren't, just as there are many who are. Just the same thing in Protestant churches. Let me get that out of the way.
Just depends on who you're talking to.
Where's your faith? Because I see what happens to the sons of Sceva. When they claim to have faith, they get the hell beaten out of them, quite literally.
Literally.
Versus Paul, get out. Jesus, get out. The disciples, the apostles, get out. That's all it takes.
That's all it ever took, man.
My experience, Lord, I can't do this. Help me. You know what that means? Christian Ashley didn't get rid of that demon. He took the time to pray, to ask for help, and because of that, his faith was rewarded on God's timing. But no, we don't want to talk about that because it's scary. Because if those are real, I got to make some changes.
And those changes are not ones that people oftentimes want to make. You brought up the Sons of Sceva. I think it'd be important for people to see that. This is the relevant text here. Yeah, this right here is your relevant text. Christian, have your fun, bro.
Okay. Verse 13 in chapter 19. Then some of the itinerant Jewish exorcists undertook to invoke the name of the Lord Jesus over those who had evil spirits, saying, I adjure you by the Jesus whom Paul proclaims. 7 sons of a Jewish high priest named Sceva, how the heck you want to say it, were doing this. But the evil spirit answered them, Jesus I know, and Paul I recognize, but who are you?
That's a bad day, bro.
And the man in whom was the evil spirit leaped on them, mastered all of them, and overpowered them, so that they fled out of that house naked and wounded. Like, is there a better diss track than that?
That's tough, man. That's tough. That right there is Thanos looking at Tony saying, all that for a drop of blood. You're funny, son. Now let me take out the trash real quick, bro.
Yeah.
Like, golly, man. Goodness gracious. Yeah, I'll just be your scribe for the next little bit, bro. You also said you wanted to go to 2 Kings 6.
Yes.
Let's
This verse has nothing to do with demons for the most part, but it does have to do with looking at things from the spiritual realm.
Indeed.
All right, so context for everyone else, this is Prophet Elisha, student of the Prophet Elijah. You're probably more familiar with from 1 Kings. This is now 2 Kings. And he has been brought to the point where he's about to be summoned before the king of Israel, who is doing evil things. Imagine that in the history of Israel.
Right.
And men, physical men, are brought to bring them there. And his servant sees this. So verse 15 through 20. When the servant of the man of God rose early in the morning and went out, behold, an army with horses and chariots was all around the city. And the servant said, Alas, my master, what shall we do? He said, Do not be afraid, for those who are with us are more than those who are with them. Then Elisha prayed and said, O Lord, please open his eyes that he may see. So the Lord opened the eyes of the young man, and he saw, and behold, the mountain was full of horses and chariots of fire all around Elisha. Oh, that's Syrian. Sorry, I misspoke earlier. And when the Syrians came down against him, Elisha prayed to the Lord and said, Please strike this people with blindness.
Golly.
So he struck them with blindness in accordance with the prayer of Elisha. And Elisha said to them, This is not the way, and this is not the city. Follow me, and I will bring you to the man whom you seek. And he led them to Samaria. As soon as they entered Samaria, Elisha said, O Lord, open the eyes of these men that they may see. So the Lord opened their eyes, and they saw, and behold, they were in the midst of Samaria.
What an account. What an account, bro. Golly. The pink stuff, by the way, is it's highlighted for something else another time.
Yeah. This account, why I brought it up in the first place, number one, because my dad always brings it to my attention. And just thinking like, hey, what if we saw things like Elisha always saw things? How terrified would we be? Or how comforted would we be to see angels fighting in the midst of demons to prevent evil from happening, while these demons also are trying to bring evil upon the world? But to also realize that we're his, and he surrounds us with that army for when we need it the most. Elisha needed it here, and God protected him. And sometimes, hey, God allows bad things to happen to us. We live in a fallen world. That's not his fault. There's only one other person I can place the blame on there, and it's me and all of us. So humanity as a whole. But what this allows the servant to see is what a spiritual-minded person should be seeing. That we are not alone in the struggle. Yes, we're surrounded by armies all the time, metaphorical or not. But we're also surrounded by the army of God, who is looking out for our benefit because we are his.
Mm-hmm.
And I think if people look at this, in addition to verses about, demons and possession and oppression, we would have a higher view of the supernatural.
And therefore a higher view of God.
Yes, because there's comfort here. That doesn't exist in other ways when you just look at the surface level of, oh no, people can get possessed. I don't want to think about that. Like, no. Why could they get possessed? And, by the way, you also see people getting that demon out of them. So I would call that a positive.
Yep.
But they focus on the negative because we don't want to live in that world.
Hey, man.
Our eyes aren't open.
Hey, you preaching right now, bruh. That's why I say that, bro. I'm letting this wash over me, bro. But y'all hear this, man? That's why y'all gotta subscribe to this man's podcast, bro. Let nothing move you. My man is preaching right now, bro. Golly, man. I'll just add in my little 2 cents here, man. But the horses and chariots of fire were there, even though the servant of Elisha couldn't see them at first. And missionaries in hostile lands have had similar experiences. I heard a story like this, but it was like the opposite, where like, they're in some tribal land or whatever, preaching Jesus, and one of the tribes really doesn't like them. So they're like, you know what, man, we're going to wipe them out. And you got like 30 guys go in there, raise, pillage, destroy, the usual stuff. And they get there and they're showing up, and the husband and the wife are in the house cowering, praying to God for rescue, right? And nothing happens all night. Nothing happens all night, right? Morning comes, and they stick their heads out or whatever, and they see that all the soldiers are there, all the tribes people are there. Weapons have been laid down, and they're like, yeah, like we'll follow this Jesus. And they're like, didn't you come to? Okay, I mean, we'll take it. If you just got convicted of sin overnight, we'll take it. So they get saved, they get baptized, and the husband and the leader of that guy become partners in ministry for a couple of years, actually, until one day the guy finally decides to ask him. The tribesman finally decides to ask the pastor that baptized them. He said, "Hey, that night, remember that night when, awkward question. Remember that night when we almost killed you? Yeah, I remember that. I remember that, buddy. What about it? What about it?" And he says, "Hey, I just wanted to ask, I thought that you and your wife came alone." "Yeah, we did." "Okay, well, then who were all those dudes dressed in white that were guarding your place that night?" And he's like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, no, we came up and there's the place was surrounded with dudes, and we weren't messing with that." We were like, oh, okay. Those must be from his God. Yeah, his God, I think, is more powerful than our God. I think we should follow him, guys. That's what happened.
Yeah.
Whoa. And the Christian didn't see it, but the enemy did, and that's part of what even brought him into faith.
It's amazing how he works. I mean, I was just my current small group leader was a missionary in Kenya for many years, and he was telling me a story about another missionary friend of his who knew that this tribe over here had Muslim influence, but weren't actually. They were more tribal animism kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
And met this kid on the way to the village whose name was Isa. Now, Isa is the Arabic form of Jesus.
Right.
Went into the village, talked with the chief, and be like, "Hey," the chief looked at him and said, "Can you explain to me why my son's name is Isa?" And the missionary's like, "Well, what do you mean? You named your kid, right?" And he said, 4 years ago, I had a dream where a man said, 'Name your son Isa. I will bring someone to explain it to you.'"
That's nuts. That's nuts.
So he goes into an explanation. It's derived from Jesus, derived from Joshua, Yeshua, who is the Savior of the world. And I don't know if it was the entire village or most of the village came to faith that day because God had sent a vision in a dream. Now, I say that to contrast the other one of, the super army on the side. That's great. But God doesn't always have to work that way. He doesn't have to work militarily.
Truth.
He can work with a soft voice that says, "Name your son this."
Ain't that the truth, man? Ain't that the truth? I think that's a good segue into your second verse right here.
All right. This is James 2:19. James is my favorite book in the entire Bible. I think James and I would get along well. He's a very practical man. It's look, okay, here's my theology. You can make all these highfalutin terms for, postmillennialism, blah, 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 whatever. This is what it's about. And that's exactly how I would write scripture if I was led to do so, is exactly how he writes.
Nice.
So, you believe that God is one. You do well. Even the demons believe and shudder.
Ooh. Golly, bro.
I hate this verse so much because I'm in this verse and I don't like it.
That's funny.
And that's another thing James does to me. He puts me in the verse without even knowing me.
Mm-hmm. Because we do to act like just having a base faith in God is enough. And it's nah, bro. That's no better. That's no better than a demon when you really think about it.
Yeah, but there's a reason They beg with Jesus when the legion is there inside of that one man. They beg, please don't send us back. Like, please don't hurt us or send us to where we deserve to be. Put us in the pigs instead. Because they're afraid of his power.
Right.
Because they're afraid of him because they know they can't win. They've deluded themselves into thinking they can win, which is what Satan will end up finding along the way. It's even prophesied before, but he doesn't believe it. He knows the scripture. He doesn't believe it. But they believe that God is who he says he is, and that doesn't make them believers. That makes them smart. It doesn't make them wise.
Right. They just have a fact in their head. So they're doing the opposite with that fact that they should be. Yeah, I feel that.
And intellectually, I know God is real. I know he loves me. But what does that change if that's all I do is just know?
Yeah, like if it never drops, I like to say, if it never drops from your head to your heart, what's actually happening? Like, nothing. You're just learning about someone, but you're not actually learning them. Let's see, 7. Yep.
I wanted to bring this one up too because it kind of summarizes my story. And it summarizes our story when we actually do our job, when we actually work in faith.
Facts.
James 4:7. Talking about being humble before this. Submit yourselves, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Now, once again, I don't think Satan himself was personally involved in my attack. But one of his forces was there. One of his underlings was there. And what happened? I resisted. Not resisted. I didn't bring out a sword. I didn't bring out a cross or anything. Get back in the name of the Lord. No, I said, I can't do this because I can't. Jesus, I need your help. And that's what got rid of the problem. That was
we always come back to that. I always come back to that as the issue, submit yourself to Jesus Christ, and, people might say that we're boring because, all of our solutions eventually dovetail back to that, basically. But, if that's the answer, bro. As a wise pastor once said, bro, if that's the answer, that's the answer.
What more do you want from me?
Right.
James, pragmatic James is telling you to do the thing. Do the thing.
That's all you got to do. I can't give you anything other than what works.
Yeah, and it doesn't say, hey, he will flee from you immediately. That happened in my case. But he does say he will flee. So sometimes it takes longer than you want it to. So I'm not here to just tell you, give you a little, goodness gracious, can't even think of it, prosperity gospel moment here. Resist the devil, he'll flee from you. Well, he will. On God's timing. Job didn't want the devil around him doing what he was doing. Well, his entire family got massacred. All of his assets are gone. He's left with nothing except his wife, who's a very interesting woman in her own right.
Right.
But God showed up later on, after the tragedy, and the devil couldn't do anything about it. Because only one of them had the power.
There's always rescue. There's always rescue from the fight. You just have to make it to the rescue. But the great thing about the gospel is the same one that will rescue you eventually will also give you the staying power to last until the rescue. As long as you actually submit yourself to him. And I think this is the verse that you brought up earlier, or something like it anyway. Let me see. Yeah, I think this is what you were talking about earlier. When the unclean spirit has gone out of a person, it passes through waterless places, seeking rest, but finds none. Then it says, I will return to my house from which I came. And when it comes, it finds the house empty, swept, and put in order. Then it goes and brings with it 7 other spirits, more evil than itself, and they enter and dwell there. And the last state of that person is worse than the first. So also it will be with this evil generation. If you guys want my exegesis of that, check the video in the card. I've tackled this already, but Christian thoughts. You've kind of mentioned this already with the Sons of Sceva thing.
Yeah. Well, as well, like the story you were telling about that woman who wanted the exorcism. That's one of the reasons I remember you telling me why you didn't do it.
Yes. Yes.
was because you didn't want this to happen. Yeah, it's bad now, but could you imagine if there were 7 more?
Right.
And that's just an illustration. It could be 9 more. It could be a legion. Who knows?
Right.
You've started with a small problem, but that's not the real problem.
Right.
The real problem is that you don't know who Jesus is.
Exactly.
And that needs to change. And I had one of my professors here he was asked a question, do you believe demonic possession is real? And thank God he's smart and intelligent and wise. So he said yes. And then he said, here's the story I have for you. When I was a pastor down in the deeper south, a man was brought to me who was possessed by a demon. How do I know this? Because I would be talking to him, and he would flip on a switch. And there would be this other entity inside of him that knew who I was, knew things I hadn't said, hated me, wanted me gone. And he was asked, well, why don't you just get rid of the demon? Why don't you exorcise it? He said, because that man inside is not ready. The actual human being that is being suppressed by this demon isn't ready to make a commitment. And I don't want to be the one who makes things worse for him by casting this one out and 7 more coming in, using this verse as his reason why. And I got to tell you, I see the wisdom in that. I probably would have made the exorcism, you being young buck, thinking I know everything. Because, problem. Yeah, demon problem. Get rid of demon, no problem. Well, there's still a problem.
Right.
And I'm ministering to that person that I've exorcised the demon out of through God's power. Do I just say, well, demon's gone, good luck? No, that's not how this works. Yes, if God so calls you to do it, cast that demon out. But don't stop there. Meet with the person, know who they are, and realize that not just anyone has this power and authority to get these demons out. It's only someone under his authority who then has a further work to do other than we look at the more impressive thing, like getting the demon out. Well, that's what whole movies have been based around. But the more impressive thing above that is to get to know that person and to have them point them to Christ.
That man preaching today, bro. That man showed up bag ready, bro. Bag ready.
You caught me in a mood.
Hey man, that's what I like to see, bro. That's why I open up with testimonies, bro. Because telling your story of how God has saved and guided you usually primes people to be preaching, bro. It's not just to let the audience know that you're not a heretic. Like there's other reasons for why. Like I said, my second selection from the armory up here. That whole shelf, by the way, is what we call the formative shelf. So there's a bunch of good stuff up there. But this book, another book on Christian warfare, it's called The Adversary. Let me make sure I get it in here. The Adversary, The Christian versus Demonic Activity by Mark I. Bubeck. I don't know, I'm pretty certain I butchered everything after the word Mark there. But yeah, just another another selection. He says we're all involved, whether we like it or not, and spiritual warfare is real. This battle will not go away, and ignoring it could be disastrous. And I think I would agree with that. Just reading a short selection, pages 142, kind of sort of 142 to 144. It's in chapter 9 called Bold Confrontation May Be Needed. And the author shares a story of an idiopathic illness, unknown origin, illness of unknown origin, in his daughter, idiopathic, idio for idiot, I don't know what's happening, and, path for pathogen. So, yeah, I'm an idiot because I don't know why this pathogen is happening. But because in medicine we like to act smarter than we are, we made a smart word for the fact that we're idiots. So he shares a story of an idiopathic, of an idiopathic illness in his daughter and how prayer created a change. So reading now from The Adversary. For several years, our youngest daughter had been troubled periodically with ill-defined fears. Physical nausea and colitis symptoms seemed to accompany these bouts with fear. When she reached the age of 11, these bouts grew more numerous and often lasted for longer periods. A thorough medical examination revealed no physical problem that could account for the colitis and nausea, and gradually the problem began to follow a pattern. Each night, as bedtime approached, the symptoms would appear. Terrifying fear would engulf her. Her nausea was so pronounced that she would insist upon having a container by her bed in case she might vomit. The colitis symptoms would constantly plague her efforts to sleep. Her tears and fears combined to bring grave concern into our home. Medical science seemed to have no answer. The possibility of counseling was suggested for this possible psychosomatic illness. And it was about this time that the Lord was giving me some new insights into the importance of aggressive spiritual warfare. Sound familiar, my friend? The Word of God was coming alive in my life concerning this important subject, so I began to wonder if our daughter's problem could be caused by some demonic affliction. I shared my concern with my dear wife, and together we began to pray for divine wisdom as to whether this could be the problem. I was reluctant even to mention the possibility to our daughter, lest her reaction be greater fear and harm. I now see what a disservice this was to her. Whew. When I finally shared this truth with my youngest daughter, her response was very positive and proved to be one of the great growing experiences of her life. Probably similar to yourself there, Christian. We began to realize the reality of demonic affliction through the power of prayer. On several occasions, when Judy was under greatest distress, I would go into her room and kneel by her bed. Taking her trembling hands into mine, I would begin to pray silently over her. During this kind of praying, on repeated occasions, the symptoms would subside and disappear completely. She would be able to go to sleep and rest well, awakening refreshed and ready to face another day. I was now fairly certain that the problem was demonic, so I intensified my own prayer intercession, much as outlined in the previous chapter. The results, though gratifying in these limited recessions, were not lasting. In fact, the severity of the attacks actually seemed to increase. I have since come to know that this is a good sign. One of two things usually happens when one enters into aggressive warfare in any particular problem. Both are good. Sometimes, if the affliction is light, the results are immediately positive and greater freedom results. At other times, the attack may intensify for a time. This is the enemy's way of striking back and seeking to turn us aside from our resolve to enjoy our victory in Christ. And he goes on at the end of this chapter to give 5 cautions in confronting the enemy that I think are worth mentioning before we transition into our final topic for today.
Real quick.
Yes, sir.
Some of you listening out there may be asking this question. Why would God allow this to happen? Why would God allow this little girl? Why would God allow little just graduated from college Christian from suffering through this demonic attack? Because of things like that. Because of what you learned from the experience. Yeah, I read over and over again demonic possession, demonic oppression, but it didn't make sense to me until it happened to me. Sometimes you need that. Sometimes a greater good comes out of that. That section of the book does not exist to help instruct you and I without his daughter being afflicted. We're not having this conversation today without me being afflicted. Yeah, it sucks in the moment. Or it sucks for however long it lasts. But it's far more merciful to allow that to happen than to let you be blissfully unaware or ignorant. That's not a loving God. And I also think we need to point out, yeah, he allowed those things to happen. But what other things didn't he allow to happen that we don't know about because he intervened?
That's good. That's good. See, man, my man preaching today, bro. That man had his spiritual Wheaties today, bro. That man had himself a full plate of the bread of life and licked it clean, and thanks to Elohim, bro. Like that's what happened today, bro. But yeah, 5 cautions in confronting the enemy. 1, bold warfare should always be accompanied by a deep commitment to the lordship of Jesus Christ and a daily abiding in Christ. 2, such warfare requires careful doctrinal study of the grounds for our victory. You got to know your Bible. 3, practice scripture memorization so that the sword of the Spirit is always ready for your use. 4, depend completely, not partially, completely upon the Holy Spirit for wisdom to respond rightly. And 5, as we've just gone to great lengths to talk about, be sure the person in question desires release and is committed to surrender to the Lordship of Jesus Christ. So like I said, hope you guys wrote down the first book. This is the second book, The Adversary, Mark I. Bubeck. Give it an order, give it a find. Christian, what are your thoughts as we transition to spiritual warfare at the cultural level? Because so far we've been talking about it at the individual level.
Yep. We live in a fallen world. And if you don't think that, there's very little I can do for you. We live in a world that does not know Christ, that does not love Christ, that actively despises him whether they realize it or not. And that happens even in Christian lives. But for the most part, the world hates Jesus. And they're going to act like it. They're going to do the things Paul talks about in Romans 1, where he leaves them to their passions so that they can just do what they've done, so that they can just, hey, I've let you off the leash. Do what you're going to do, and then realize, oh, it's not fulfilling. Oh, it's not good for you. And when it comes to, cultural wars and stuff like that, yes, there are actively people out there who want Christian values gone. And that is a demonic attack of a certain sort. But that doesn't make the people demons. It means they're not wise. It means they don't know better. And how are they going to know better unless you respond like Christ did? And guess what? By the way, while we're on that subject, you remember Jesus and the Pharisees? How many Pharisees converted in the Gospels? 2. Nicodemus, Joseph of Arimathea.
Yeah, those 2 maybe. Paul definitely. To name a couple. It's tough for me to, it's tough for me to say. I mean, those definitely. I mean, just Paul on his own, it almost makes the whole thing worth it, don't it?
Yeah. But how many times did Jesus talk to the Pharisees?
Oh, like every other page.
How many times did they come to faith?
Ooh.
So you're telling me that Jesus himself can't override someone else's free will to make them follow him because they were never his to begin with. They're serving their father, Satan, whether they realize it or not. So, yes, have these conversations with people, but don't demonize them. Jesus didn't demonize the Pharisees. He called them out on their sin. He called them out on their evil for misleading the people, which is what we should do. But he didn't say, I'm throwing you into hell today, even though they rightfully deserve that. Because that's not who Jesus is. And neither should we as his followers be the same. So when these abortion laws are passed, or a drag queen is reading books to kids, yes, I'm against all those things. But how am I handling it? How am I handling it like Jesus would have handled it? That's the true bit of spiritual warfare there, is how you fight the battle.
Hey, that's facts. That's facts. Just like you were saying, everything you're saying backed up in Ephesians 6, we wrestle not against flesh and blood, not against people, but against the spiritual forces of evil that are exerting sway over the people. So I wanted to take us to Daniel, Ephesians, and then 2 Corinthians as we start to land this plane. But catch this. Daniel, under, he's in the exile in Babylon with the rest of his people. This is Daniel chapter 10, verse 2 and 3 right here. In those days, I, Daniel, was mourning for 3 weeks. I ate no delicacies, no meat or wine entered my mouth, nor did I anoint myself at all for the full 3 weeks. Why? Because he's fasting. He's praying. He's trying to see an answer from God about a specific issue. If you would like to know what that issue is, go read Daniel. We're here for something else. You come down, and we get our answer here. An angel shows up. A hand touched me and set me trembling on my hands and knees, and he said to me, "O Daniel, man greatly loved." What a great intro. What a great way. Like that's how angels look at you.
Ooh.
Oh, man greatly loved. Oh, woman greatly loved. By who? By the angels? No, by the God that the angel serves.
Mm.
You know, they know because they're in heaven all the time. They hear how God talks about you. You're a man or a woman greatly loved. The angels know that. God's love for you is evident to the angels that serve him. It's not a private love. They know. They know. So don't get it twisted. Don't get it twisted. God loves you. God loves you, Christian. Then he said to me, "Fear not, Daniel, for from the first day that you set your heart to understand and humbled yourself before your God, your words have been heard." From the first day. Some of y'all still praying for stuff now feel like you've not been heard. You've been heard from the first day. And I, said the angel, have come because of your words. So why did it take 3 weeks? The prince of the kingdom of Persia withstood me 21 days. But Michael, one of the chief princes, came to help me, for I was left there with the kings of Persia, and came to make you understand what is to happen to your people in the latter days, for the vision is for days yet to come. He had a vision, he wanted to understand it, he was asking God for the explanation. God dispatched an angel to give him the explanation. He would have been there on day one when he asked, but because of the importance of this vision, Daniel's visions establish the timetable for when the Messiah comes. If we don't get these visions, it becomes less sure that Jesus is who he claimed to be. So stopping this particular message is of high priority to the kingdom of darkness. And they were able to hold it back for 21 days, but God wins in the end. But the important thing about this is that this little section here peels back the curtain just a tad to show us that sometimes our prayers take time to be answered because the spiritual forces of evil are doing their best to hold back the answer, right? Sometimes you got to wait for an answer because you need to learn patience. Other times you got to wait for an answer because logistically you've asked for something legit and Satan's like, no, and you gotta pray it through. You know, like I said, there's a lot of speculation that you could run off into the weeds with a text like this. Don't, but do learn what's important to learn from a text like this. Christian, what says you?
Yeah, let's focus on what matters in this verse. And it's not the angelology of the matter. It's not the demonology of the matter. It's what's being revealed to us. Where else do we see this in Scripture? Off the top of my head, I can't think of anything. I'm sure there's something I'm forgetting. But this so blatantly says angels and demons clash over our prayers, over what we desire to understand. And Daniel waits for 3 weeks. I don't have that kind of patience. I get angry day one when I don't get my answer. And yet this man of God says, I'm going to commit to this. I committed to fasting. I'm just drinking water. There is nothing I've done here except to be humble and faithful to my God, who will answer me when he decides to answer. And by the way, he decided to answer day one, but he allowed this to go on for a time. And that's what a lot of people don't like. And I'm one of those people. Because we're an instant gratification kind of people. I submit my order to Amazon. Yes, I'll pay the extra shipping to get it later today. I'm hungry. What am I going to do? I'm going to go either make food or I'm going to go get food. Daniel is so much better than us in that he's willing to wait and to commit to what he said he would do.
Oof, talk about it. Ooh, talk about it, man. He right? Did too. He did. He said I'm praying until I see the answer, man.
Yeah. And that's 21 days. God could have allowed it to last even longer. And would Daniel have broken at a certain point? Or did God know this is his limit? This is when I'm going to give him what he needs? Don't know. It's not in the text. but we can speculate for a little bit. So don't get worried. Like, are there princes of nations? Are they demons? We can. That's a different topic.
Right.
But for right now, focus on why those things exist is to prevent us from getting what we desire from God. True answers.
Mm-hmm. That's their goal, man. That is the goal. Ephesians 5 gives us some practical instructions, right? Okay, so now that we know all this about spiritual warfare, what do we do with it? What do we actually do at the cultural level? We've been talking at the individual level. At the cultural level, how does this play itself out? Ephesians 5, as you can tell, Ephesians is quite the book on spiritual warfare. Verse 11. Take no part in the unfruitful works of darkness, but instead expose them. Why? For it is shameful even to speak of the things that they do in secret. But when anything is exposed by the light, it becomes visible. For anything that becomes visible is light. Therefore it says, awake, O sleeper, and arise from the dead, and Christ will shine on you. One of Paul's amazing, multi-mashups of Old Testament scripture there. But what's being commanded there is that we as Christians, this is part of our creed, is that we expose darkness for what it is. Not to judge people and have some superiority complex over people, but as Christian was saying, to show them how these lies and false philosophies, which ultimately come from the spiritual forces of evil, are ensnaring them, and how Jesus wakes us up from these lies. Let me see. 1 Timothy, it would help if I spelled it right. 1 Timothy chapter 4 also gives us a peek into this as well. Now the Spirit, the third person of the Godhead, the Spirit of God expressly says that in later times some will depart from the faith by devoting themselves to who? Deceitful spirits. And what else? Teachings of demons. How? What's their vehicle of introducing these teachings? Through the insincerity of liars whose consciences are seared, who forbid marriage and require abstinence from foods. These are real-world consequences. The forbidding of marriage and all sorts of diet shakeups and whatnot, all coming from the teachings of demons and deceitful spirits. We don't usually think about false doctrine being a way that demons work, but it is. And the Spirit, and God considers it such a priority that He has the Spirit of God Himself expressly warn us in the Scriptures about these things. And so just a brief history of some of the church's great exploits in spiritual warfare. MLK and the abolitionists against segregation. You thought they were fighting slaveholders? They was fighting demons, bro. Slaveholders was just the tools. Christians against child marriage in India and Middle Eastern Muslim countries. Now, that's a demonic stronghold that we're fighting, and by, thanks to God, winning. Christian abolitionists of abortion and IVF, such as, myself, Christians like me who preach open air at gay pride events or in red light districts, because heterosexual sexual sin is just as much as the other side. We preach it everywhere. Everyone hates us. Christians ministering in prisons or gang-controlled areas of inner cities. You think demons ain't operating there? Yes, they are. Christians who push back against medical misinformation that results in people dying unnecessary deaths. And therefore, throwing that blame up to God. All of this stuff traces its roots back to spiritual warfare against cosmic powers of evil. And as I pull up our final scripture of the day, Christian, your thoughts?
Every single thing that's mentioned here promotes evil. So, of course, evil wants it to happen. Evil will work to use whoever they have under their sphere of influence to make it happen. Christians can be used to cause evil. Christians have led to child marriages in the past. Christians can have very false ideas about how medicine works. Christians can not go to those red light districts and yet decry them and say it's evil, while at the same time a pastor or an elder or a deacon or a priest or what have you is utilizing them. So get off your high horse Get rid of your pride. Realize what sins are specifically targeted at you, what your temptations are. Fight them, resist them, and the devil will flee from you. So that when you speak out against these things, if you've participated in them, you can be honest and say, I screwed up. If you haven't, it's not on your record. And it's the same thing. That's why cults are so popular across the entire history of the world, especially more recently in America from 60s on. It happened before then, but it became really popular in the 60s. Is because people were looking for answers, and the church wasn't doing its job to provide them. So they went to someone who had all these highfalutin ideas of, well, I'm going to say you guys can't get married, but I can get married and have all these wonderful women in my own personal little harem. But you believe me because I bring some satisfaction to your life, rather than the God of the universe who brings ultimate satisfaction, because that's what we're all looking for. But if Christians aren't doing their jobs, if Christians aren't doing the things we're talking about here of resisting the evil of this world and instead allowing evil to persevere, that's how people end up staying lost.
That's good stuff, man. That's powerful stuff. That's why I had him on first, bro. Y'all got to check out this man's podcast, bro. Let Nothing Move You on Spotify, bro.
You've been the biggest hype man for this, man.
Come on, bro. Come on, bro. Hey, man, that's the channel, bro. That's the channel, bro. Like, bring on people, hype them up, bro. Because if the world wants to talk about hypocrites, I'm gonna talk about the reals all the louder. I'm gonna talk about the real ones out here. I don't want anybody to have the ability to say, I didn't see what real Christianity was about. I don't want people to be able to say that because I'm tired of hearing it, quite frankly. But this is our last scripture of the day, 2 Corinthians 10, verses 3 to 6. For though we walk in the flesh, we are not waging war according to the flesh. Man, that like I said, that one thing should flip how you see the culture wars in society all the time. Like, stop making demons out of Democrats, bro. They're not your enemy. They're not your enemy, bro. Like, golly, bro. It's like Dark Knight. It's like that Dark Knight movie when Batman had to save the SWATs from shooting the hostages because they look like clowns. Yeah, sure, they might look like it, but those are the people you gotta save, bro. Chill out, man. Like, chill. For the weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh. All right? Y'all don't understand. Y'all don't understand the severity of what we're reading. This right here, 2 Corinthians 10, 3 to 6, is Christian jihad. This is what this is. That's what this is. And if you don't understand it as that, you're not going to hear it with that level of severity, right? All right, we ain't Muslims, right? Just to kind of pick a contrast, right? We ain't Muslims. We don't wage war according to the flesh. The weapons of our warfare are not of the flesh. No, our weapons are spiritual. They have divine power. Whose divine power? The divine power of the Spirit of God himself to destroy strongholds. And what are those strongholds that we destroy? Verse 5 tells us what our warfare is. We destroy people? Do we destroy cities? Do we destroy nations? Christians, scholar to the people, help me out, bro. What is verse 5 saying that we actually destroy, bro?
We destroy arguments. And
arguments.
Every lofty opinion.
And every lofty opinion, bro, raised against the knowledge of God. That's what we destroy. Arguments and every lofty opinion. That's crazy, bro. Some of y'all Christians are more energetic about fighting to keep some sort of Christmas memorabilia on your Starbucks coffee mug than you are to destroy the arguments of people in your workplace and in your lives that are oppressed by false teachings of demons. This is insane, bro. This is insane. You'd rather fight for your espresso but not fight for the express freedom of your fellow human beings. You see what I did there? See what I did there, bro?
Yes, I see what
you did there, bro. I used to be a rapper, bro.
Heard.
I used to be, bro. But that's what it says. We destroy arguments. We destroy lofty opinions that are raised against the knowledge of God. And we take every thought captive to obey Christ. Again, take every thought captive to obey Christ. That's another one of those oogie boogie verses. But if you understand that your jihad by God is to destroy arguments and lofty anti-Christ opinions, then taking every thought captive to obey Christ simply means you argue until that philosophy is down, pinned to the mat, tapping for you to get off it, and you say, no, admit Christ as Lord, and this conversation is good. That's what we do with arguments. We don't do that to people. We don't hold people at gunpoint and say, pay the jizya, or, admit, give fealty to Allah, or we'll shoot you. But we will treat your arguments that way. Which I think is insane. Christians are too afraid of getting into arguments because we wrongfully think that not getting into arguments is how we effectively image the love of Christ, when in actuality the command of Christ through the apostle, no, destroy those arguments with full prejudice and save the people that espouse them.
Yep. Full Sherman marching to the sea.
Exactly.
Annihilate.
That's what we're supposed to do. Like I said, the earlier weapons discussed in Ephesians are offensive weapons. Let me read those again. Our offensive weapons: the sword of the Spirit, the Word of God, the Bible; our prayer in the Spirit, our alertness, and our perseverance. All four of those things have the divine power of the Spirit of God to wake people up to the truth. And that is why we have reluctance towards confrontation or conflict in conversation, because there is an enemy who wants to dissuade you from engaging your most powerful weapons to free captives. So be courageous and engage the people and the culture around you unto the glory of Jesus, for the glory of the Father. Christian, what you got to say, bro? Because that's all I got for the people, bro. What you got here at the end, bro?
Well, I would also argue there's another subset of Christians who don't want to argue because they know in their heart of hearts they're not up for the task because they don't know their Bible well, because they don't know their Jesus well. And if you're one of those people, this is not me saying you're worthless. This is not me saying that you have no place at the table here. This is me saying earn that place at the table.
Ooh.
Earn that right. Because you think I started off knowing everything? I talked about it earlier. Satan knew more than me. Satan still knows more than me. But I'm working on it every single day to be better. If I'm actually serving Christ, if I'm actually doing my job, which is, hey, among other things, love God, love your neighbor as yourself, there's the entire Bible. There you go. That's all you need to know. But no, that's not all we need to know. We need to know how to do those things. Because loving your neighbor in a sin-filled world could be, they're getting married and they're gay. That's fine. But then God says something different. So how can I love those people in the same way? Well, if I don't have my arguments built up on faith, on Christ, then I can't reach out to them and say, hey, what you're doing is evil, but I still love you. How can those two things be there? How can you hate what someone is doing and yet still love them? Well, unless you know who Jesus Christ is, who very much hates evil, and yet still stuck his neck out for you on a cross, for me on a cross, and died on a cross so that he could come back and cover my sins if I just say yes to him, then nothing's going to change. So if there's timidity in you, that's okay. Not everyone is the greatest speaker of all time. Moses allegedly is not a good speaker. But when the man actually gets the job done, when he's actually faithful, he's one of the most poetic people in the world. I mean, you could just read the one psalm he made, and I think there may be two. But it's him praising God. It's him reaching out to him. He leads the people in worship multiple times over, supposedly as a man who just can't speak. And I have a stutter and a lisp that I have worked on for many years to get rid of. But guess what? They come back. I'm imperfect. Mm-hmm. Sometimes when I'm in an argument, I forget the proper noun I'm supposed to be using to dismantle the other argument, and I get angry at myself, and I don't get a second chance. That's okay. You still showed up. You still did the work. So, and once again, going back to Jesus and the Pharisees, remember how many Pharisees Jesus brought to faith. The answer is not every single one of them, which is what we would expect out of someone like Jesus. So if Jesus isn't able to do it, don't be afraid when you fail to do the same thing, because their hearts are submitting to something else.
Right.
Something that you have no control over. That veil is still over their eyes. Jesus tore it, but they just don't want to believe that he tore the veil. So be patient with yourself. Ask questions. Think about what you can do, because you're not supposed to be baiting your Richard Dawkins or whatever. That's not what God is going to tell you, more than likely. And if he does, more power to you. But what he is going to do is that coworker who says, hey, this whole abortion thing, like, what's your thought on that? Or what do you think about gay marriage? Or what do you think about illegal immigrants? Or what have you? These things, well, I believe this because this is what Jesus says. I believe we're supposed to minister to those who are the widow, the orphan, the refugee, the sojourner. Okay, well, how do you build that up? Because of what Jesus says. So get back into the Word. And he'll give you what you need.
He'll give you what you need for everything that he calls you to do. For everything that he calls you to do, man. I'm gonna just put this right here. I'm gonna just put this right here. For our outro here, ladies and gentlemen, give a round of applause to an excellent guest. It's been a long time coming. I'm glad I was able to have this brother on the podcast to talk spiritual warfare, man. I think we chopped that up pretty good. You and I always do. For those that don't know, as he said, I have done, as of the recording of this, 2 episodes on your show that are released right now, with a 3rd one on the way soon. And hey, this was great. Anytime you want to talk about anything else, it'll be a pleasure to have you on. This was his idea, by the way. I just gave him a blank check. He wanted to talk spiritual warfare, so I said, okay, let me dig in the armory for a bit, see what I can find, and bolster this up. So to all y'all out there, across America, around the world, that handful of you around the world, I hope that this conversation was encouraging. It's not just me. I'm not the only crazy Christian out there, and it's not just you. You're not the only crazy Christian out there that actually thinks, oh wow, taking Jesus and the Bible at his word is probably the way to go. There's a bunch more out there. God always has a remnant. Christian Ashley is one of them, and there are more of the faithful remnant to come. As you can see, Let Nothing Move You. Find him on Spotify. And I hope you guys have been equipped to better love God, love people, make disciples in your own life. And until next time, go in peace. Christian Ashley, say goodbye to the people the way that you do on your show, my brother. Let them know.
Now I got to remember my saying. Gosh, I was not prepared for that.
See, I got you. Stay ready so you ain't got to get ready, bro. That's a lesson in spiritual warfare right there for you, bro.
Yeah. Hey, I don't remember my exact saying because it's not written in front of me, so that's on me. But hey, remind me one more last time. Let nothing move you.
Yes, sir. Let nothing move you, bro, because you're encapsulated in the armor, bro. So because you're surrounded by Christ and you will let nothing move you, go in peace. Have a good one, folks.
Hey guys, are you interested in podcasting but don't know where to go? Well, check out Zencaster.com and go ahead and make an account there and use special promo code Let Nothing Move You, all caps. That way you can get 30% off of your next deal to go ahead and set things up so you can figure out how to edit stuff using Zencaster.com to host your stuff, to get things done there. So check out Zencaster.com, use special promo code Let Nothing Move You. All right, see ya.